So this is the last video, but this one is very special. In fact, I had to stand up, as you can tell, because I do get excited about this. And this is mechanobiology. This is where most of us can relate to. You know, some of the science and nutrigenomics can become a little overwhelming. Hopefully I just gave you a taste of that. The brain understanding and neuroscience can also become very complex, and I'm always searching for metaphors that make it simpler for us to understand. But mechanobiology, we can all understand that. It's movement. It's what all living, breathing beings need. Movement is crucial for us. Movement, actually, even of my hand, stimulates my brain, and our brain needs stimulation. Movement alters the chemistry of our body. So when I say movement, some of us will translate that into exercise. But what does it mean for us when I talk about treating people and considering their mechanobiology? People suffer with pain. I mean, listen, I've been working out since I was 14 years old with weights, running, football, track and field, soccer. I mean, pretty much you name it, even a little tennis here and there. And what I know is that I hurt sometimes. Elbows, shoulders, knees currently. So we need to understand, are there forces in our soft tissues, our fascia, right? This is a word I want you to get familiar with, our fascia. Are there forces and areas of change in our fascia that are contributing not only to our physical pain locally, let's say, but to even changes in our brain? So let me unpack this for you. Okay, so mechanobiology. It is the place where science or biology and engineering interface. So let me give you an example of what's going on a cellular level. I think you're going to love this. I do. So if you think about every cell in your body, like we talked about in the previous video for the mitochondria, the little critters that are moving around in there, if you will, the little machinery. Now we want to think about the cell as a whole. The cell has a shape, right? It's not just like the shape we've seen in books or you've seen in your high school or college biology or biochemistry. It's not just a circle, but it's something that it maintains a shape that changes. Now the maintaining of that shape is held together by filaments. Filaments from the membrane that go down into the nucleus. And if you've ever remember seeing a cell duplicate or replicate, the DNA will separate and be pulled apart and you'll see these filaments. This is mechanobiology on the smallest level. Remember we talk about over and over again, small hinges that move big doors? Well, this is the smallest hinge in mechanobiology. Filaments that form to alter the DNA to replicate the cells. Now, when you think about that a little larger, if those cells are distorted, it can affect the replication and the expression in DNA of that cell. So let's think about this for a moment. Roughly 40 to 50% of the people that come in to see us come with some type of soft tissue complaint, as I mentioned earlier, shoulder, wrist, hip and back, or back pain. When we start to consider what is the source of that, and these people may have been through and often have been through other types of therapies for the soft tissue alone, they may have received some benefit, may have had some relief, but they're still dealing with a percentage that doesn't allow them to enjoy the things they want to do. So when we start to consider everything, the brain and how it's perhaps complicating muscle tension and tone, because the brain does control the tone of our muscles. And then we look at their body chemistry through the nutrigenomics, and perhaps their serum B12 is out of balance, or their magnesium levels are critically starting to shift, or even their calcium is starting to be out of balance as many people take calcium as a supplement. We start to refine and put all this together to address their soft tissue complaint. Yes, we do help people with these types of common everyday sufferings, and we help to resolve them because we're looking at them from a full standpoint of all the facets, the brain, the nutrigenomics, and the soft tissue. Now, here's two examples of two gentlemen. One, early 60s, very active, yoga every day, actually great shape, eats completely organic and is always talking to me about my diet, is very careful with supplementation, yet has extreme neck and shoulder tension. He said, I've always felt when I get stressed that my neck and shoulders come together. And as we looked at his brain and determined there were some areas there malfunctioning, and then we altered very little in his body chemistry, his soft tissues immediately started to change. Now, how would you answer that? After all those years of doing the right things for his soft tissue and for his chemistry, there was a brain-based issue that was complicating his recovery. And the story of another gentleman who's in his early 50s, like myself, with a Parkinsonism type of presentation beginning. So he had a complicated earlier part of his life and ended up with a tremor that was beginning and started to have stiffness through his whole body. and started to do stretching to help him. But the tremor kept going, obviously, and his stiffness would not abate at all, would not let down. And it was uncomfortable and it was causing pain. So again, what did we do? Evaluate the whole person, brain, chemistry, and soft tissue. We did more on the chemistry and more on the brain side with that patient. Again, what was the result? His body started to relax more. And we were actually able to bring down and give him strategies to reduce the tremor and the way it was coming out of the brain and the way the brain was causing that to malfunction. So we're able to give him strategies, able to give him hope, able to give him back comfort through dealing with his whole body, nutrigenomics, neuroscience, and mechanobiology. This is the hope that we have for people. What we come to look at is when we evaluate the entire person, the brain, the nutrigenomics, the chemistry of the body, and the soft tissue, most of the time I would say, we start to find other areas that are complicating the recovery. So again, when you get back to health mysteries, you need to take into account the three areas that we look at, which are the brain, the body, the nutrigenomics or the chemistry, and then the soft tissues, which are very important. So I want to talk to you just a bit about fascia, this word, F-A-S-C-I-A, fascia. It's really a crucial part of our human being. It's part of our body, and it actually covers everything in our body, and it has different names for the different areas of the body it covers. So it covers the brain as the meninges, it covers the lungs as the pleura, it covers the muscles as the fascia, it covers the bones as the periosteum, but generally it's the fascia. And Dr. James Oschman, who's a biophysicist and wrote a book called Energy Medicine, talks about it as a communicating system on its own. In fact, it's a semiconductor. Most physicians and clinicians studying fascia, and there's a national fascial conference that goes on. This is how big of an issue this is in the healthcare community at large and in the world. So in the National Fascial Conference, that's a mouthful, they're talking about the semiconductor nature of the fascial system, how it actually communicates with the brain. So it's not just mechanical, it's something that is actually signaling. And now research is coming out saying the receptors in the fascia may signal faster than neurons, which is remarkable if you're understanding brain-body connections. So when we talk about the fascia, what affects our fascia? Think about saran wrap, a big piece of plastic wrap, somewhat. And if you were to bind it or twist it or pull it, you'd have these lines in it. And this is much like what happens in your fascia when you have an injury or a scar, perhaps a C-section, or there's been some other type of surgery with a knee. The fascia will pull into that area, and that may limit communication to the brain. In fact, I would tell you it will limit communication. It will alter communication. So normalizing the mechanobiology of the fascia through techniques we use, like a percussor device and working with scar tissue, will help to normalize input to the brain, reduce pain, and really resolve many chronic problems that have been there for even decades in some patients. So understanding the fascia is our job, fixing the fascia is our job and your job, and we're here to help you do that through our approaches. As in all the aspects in these videos that I covered, from the brain to the nutrigenomics to this one in the mechanobiology, I've been on my own journey with this. So I've gone through trial after trial on my own body with things that I've needed. I've determined what is the best protocols and practices. I've sought out physicians from all over the country, not only to study with them, but to learn for my own healing. So this is what I'm bringing to you in the mechanobiology and the other aspects. So we really want to remind you about the intensive week. But here you go at the end of this mechanobiology to help you along in improving your health, in going in the right direction, in thinking differently about your health with mechanobiology. We have a download for you that's going to help you assess and give you some references and resources that you can make progress when it comes to improving your health with mechanobiology. Look for our next video about our intensive week.